Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's 90-second cyber story. We're going to follow the same format, a real quick story of what's going on in the news, and then some practical ways to apply fixes in order to protect you and your business. This week, we're going to take it to the next level and dig in a little deeper on a previous subject. Let's get started. All right, this week's cyber story is going to be pretty short. In the news this week is an investor who lost $24 million in Bitcoin. And he was a conscientious cell phone user and conscientious about security. He had multi-factor authentication. If you go back a couple episodes, I talked about multi-factor or two-factor authentication, commonly called 2FA, how that works, how it helps to secure your apps and your email so that hackers can't get into it without having that extra layer of security. Typically, you receive either a text message or you have an app like Google Authenticator that provides a code that you use on top of your user ID, your password, and then it provides this code. Now, what happened with him was he logged into his Bitcoin app and noticed that his financials had been manipulated and they had transferred out, again, $24 million in Bitcoin. Unfortunately, once that's done, it's done and he's not able to recover it. So how did this happen? How does someone who's conscientious about security still have an attack like that happen? So we're going to talk about SIM swapping. And SIM swapping, so let's talk about what's a SIM? A SIM is a card that goes into your cell phone and it uniquely identifies your cell phone. It tells your cell phone provider how to route your phone calls and your text messages. Now, if you're ever to lose your phone, you can actually call your cell phone provider and they can transfer that unique identification information to a new card. So what happened in this case was someone called their cell phone, his cell phone provider, pretended to be him, and they switched it over to a new card for them, and they had the keys to the kingdom. Away they went. They were able to access his Bitcoin app because they had access to his two-factor authentication and obviously his user ID and password as well. So what do we do? So we can do a few things. First off, contact your cell phone provider. Tell them you're concerned about SIM swapping and set up extra security measures. I've set up a PIN number as well as a question and answer, a secure question and answer. And my advice to you is when you set up your secure question and answer is to set up something fake. So come up with a question, come up with actually a fake answer. You'll have to document that somewhere secure, and we're going to talk about password keepers at another date, but keep that somewhere placed secure. The reason I would suggest that is because people know you, and not only that, but their social media. And that brings me to item number 2 on how to secure yourself. So the first one was contact your cell phone provider, put some security measures in place. They'll have some recommendations. But number 2 is social media. A lot of cell phone carriers and your bank often ask for some sort of a security question. So what was the make of your first car? What's the name of your first girlfriend? What's the name of your pet? The problem is, if you've probably noticed, is that there's a lot of quizzes and fun questionnaires on social media that ask very, very similar questions, and hackers will actually harvest that data in order to impersonate you. So that's number 2. Be careful what you share online. Number 3, be weary of fake phone calls and or risky phone calls and suspicious text messages. I just got a link yesterday on my cell phone as a text message that looked like an e-transfer, but it was fake, looking to harvest my data. So this is all about awareness, and we've beat this to death on this series, but being aware. If it looks suspicious, it's probably risky, ignore it, get a confirmation. If you're expecting an e-transfer from somebody, contact them. If you're not, ignore it. So if you ever find that your cell phone suddenly stops working, call your cell provider immediately, especially if you haven't put in these these security measures. And because once they have that, I mean, especially if you own a business and you have access in your email, and you've gone to those steps, you've taken my advice, you've set up disaster recovery and backups, you've got your VPN in place, you've got a firewall in place, you're doing multi-factor authentication, You still have to have that awareness about you. So that's my advice for this week. If you guys have any questions, leave me a comment below. Again, I'll put a link to the two-factor authentication video I had. It's still a great step. This is not a slam against that. It's just, there's just more steps that you need to follow to make sure that you're being as secure as possible. Anyways, you guys have a great weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.